Yeah, so this is an array, and this array has, let's take some integers into it. Let's say 8, 3, 9, 7, and 2. Now try it out, Falguni. So S is equal to first 0, right? So I equal to 0. Will the for loop execute for this?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
I is, how many elements are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the value of n is how much?
5.
5.
5. So I equal to 0, it will work, right? Then I equal to 1. Then I is equal to 2. I is equal to 3. I is equal to 4. I is equal to 5. So this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All this number of times the for loop will execute.
Yes, sir.
And at this point, the condition which is I is less than n is false, right?
Right, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
the number of times the for loop will execute is n plus 1. Got it, Falguni?
Yes, sir.
This is n, and one time when it is going to get false, that time also the condition is checked or not. What is important is whether the condition is checked or not. Whether it is giving true or false result is a different story. When it gives true result, will execute the inner part of the for loop. But at least for that particular statement itself, it is executed n plus 1 times. Got it? Everyone? Anish,
Yes, yes, sir. Got it.
Anirudh, Ujwal, Jigyasa, Ishita, any doubt in
Yes, sir.
this? Understanding this? See, this is very fundamental. ये तो आना ही चाहिए अपने को समझ में. जब तक नहीं आएगा हम आगे नहीं जाएंगे, and I will be going very slow in the initial state, in the initial problems, until and unless everybody understands it. समझ में आया सबको?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So coming back to the analysis, so this particular for loop will execute for n plus 1 times. What about the inner statement?
N times.
N times.
Inner statement will execute for
N
n
time.
times. What about the return as?
N times.
1 time.
1 time.
Only once, right?
1 times.
Only 1 time. Now, if you find out the summation of all these things, right? So if you find out the summation of all these things and write it in the form of a function of n, how could I write it? Is like 1 plus n plus 1 plus n plus 1. How much it comes out to be? It comes out to be 2n plus 3. Isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Right. So what is the, which is, see, 3 is a constant, 2 is also a constant, a coefficient constant,
Yes, sir.
right? So the function of n is having the highest degree of polynomial as how much? 1,
Yes, sir.
right? See, n की power में कितना है यहाँ पर? 1 है.
1.
So highest degree is 1.
1.
That means I could say that the particular problem or the particular algorithm that we have written here is of the order of n.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
of course, there are different classes, big OH, omega H, theta of big O of theta, and all those things. But those things will come later. First, we need to understand how to analyze the code. Right? So I'm just writing here order of n. The O here means order of. Right? But in the coming classes, in the coming sessions, we will define this O also. This O could be theta, this O could be big O, or this O could be omega also. But right now for this particular thing, for initial classes, we won't be discussing this thing right now. Understood everyone? How I said order of n?
Yes, sir.
Right. So what we have actually counted here is we have counted the frequency of the number of times the statement in an algorithm is getting executed, and with that frequency we have found out a function of n, where n is nothing but your number of elements, and that is nothing but is defining the order at which the uh, the algorithm, the amount of time in the function of n the algorithm is going to take. ये क्या बता रहा है? टाइम. ऑर्डर ऑफ n का जो फंक्शन हमने लिखा है fn इक्वल टू 2n plus 3, this is defining the time the algorithm will take to add the elements in an array. Done? Any confusion, any question in this so far?
No, sir.
Right. So that was our time complexity. Now let's talk a little about space complexity as well. So this is time. And on this side, we'll talk about space complexity. How many variables have we used?
One.
One variable?
Sir, two variable, S and I.
Sure.
Sir,
Three variables.
S, I, N and
We
array
also
also.
have, see, we do also have an array, because your array elements are also going to be stored in the memory only. Isn't it? आपने अगर array input लिया है तो वो array input कहाँ पे लोगे आप? मेमोरी में ही लोगे ना? आ रहा है समझ में?
Yes, sir.
तो एक तो array हो गया, उसके बाद we have n, a scalar variable, so for the number of input. Then we have I, another scalar variable, and we have s, a variable to store the sum.
Yes, sir.
All these scalar variable will take time, one each, because these will be running for a constant time. What about A? How much space A is going to occupy?
Sir, N.
A ka space will be depending upon the number of elements that you are going
Yes,
to
sir.
input into the array. So what is that value? That is value is nothing but n. N is your number of elements. In our case, we have taken n is equal to 5. So A has 5 elements. So basically, if we try to find the sum of all this with a function of n, we'll be having n plus 3. So the space complexity of this algorithm is also coming out to be of the order of n, because the highest degree of the polynomial is 1 in the relation. Understood everyone this example? Please ask me if you haven't understood it, because
Sir,
if you haven't understood this, it will be really difficult.
sir, like, can you go again after the n plus 3 part?
After n plus 3, I haven't said anything.
No, sir, like that step only. I didn't understand how that came. N plus
Okay.
3.
Excuse
Okay,
me,
fine.
sir.
Yes.
I left the meeting after that written as part, so can you tell me again?
Why you guys are doing this? I mean, why it is happening?
Sir, network.
Purposefully, I have kept the waiting room this time, because in the last course also I have seen many of you just go and come here and there,
Sir, network.
which I don't really want here in this course, because this course is purely mathematical and everything is going to be done on the whiteboard only. The entire course will run on whiteboard. So you should not miss on to anything. So everyone, please be aware of this fact now.
Okay, sir.
Because when I'll be writing the things, I won't be looking at who is waiting in the waiting room and all. You might miss on to key points. So yeah, so I'm repeating it again. The algorithm, did you understood, Ananya, about 1, n plus 1, n and all these things? Was it
Sir,
understood?
sir, I understood till return S part. After that,
No, this s is equal to 1 will execute for 1
yes, sir,
constant.
that I understood.
For loop will execute for n plus
Yes,
1 time.
yes, sir, yes, sir.
S is equal to s plus a will execute for n times. Return s will execute for 1 time. Now what we did is, after this we just summed up. We found the summation of all these statements. So 1 plus n plus 1 plus n plus 1, summation of all these statements in the algorithm, and we wrote it in the function of n.
Okay,
So what we got is, we got f of n is equal to 2n plus 3.
okay,
So this is the polynomial equation that we have got. Now the highest degree of this polynomial equation is 1, right?
yes, sir,
So from this we concluded that the algorithm that we have written here is going to take of the order of n times to execute and find the sum of all the elements in the array. That's why this order of n is mentioned here.
okay,
Okay.
yes, sir,
Similarly, for the space complexity also we found out that all the variables and the input variables and the scalar variables we have just listed down. So A is your array which is going to store n elements. Okay. So
yes, sir,
how much space does A will occupy in the memory? It will occupy the space equal to the number of elements it has.
yes, sir,
How many elements it has? It's an array of n elements. So
and
ultimately
elements,
we could say that this array will have n elements into it.
yes, sir,
N is nothing but the number of elements, so it won't occupy any additional space, so it is going to be constant value. I is a scalar variable which is being used at runtime of the program, so at a time it will occupy only one value in I. मतलब I का value एक बार में सिर्फ एक ही रहेगा, right? So
yes,
it
sir,
will be constant. S is going to store the result of your addition. It is also be going to be constant. If we find the
yes, sir,
summation of all this and write it in function of n, it is n plus 3, and we finally get this also as order of n.
yes, sir,
So from this analysis, what we did, I could conclude that the algorithm to find the sum of elements in an array consumes of the order of n time and consumes of the order of n space. So the time complexity and space complexity is defined in this way.
understood, sir.
Any other doubt? Falguni, Nipun, Ujjwal,
So here
Anish?
the
Yes.
time complexity and the space complexity here is the same, n.
Yes, in this particular case, the time complexity and space complexity is the same.
Sir, I didn't get
So
the time complexity. Means how did you just calculate 2n plus 3?
I calculated it. Okay. You were not there in the class?
No, sir, I was there.
Okay. So I just found out each statement in the algorithm is consuming how much of time,
It's 10
right?
plus 1.
X is equal to 0 is constant because एक ही बार उसको assign करोगे value आप. I'm
Right, sir.
trying to calculate the number of time a particular instruction in your program is executing. Got it now?
Got it, sir. Got it.
S is equal to 0 will execute for one time. For loop is going to execute for n plus 1. And in green, what you can see is the explanation of why n plus 1.
Yeah, that I understood.
Right? Now, once we enter into the for loop, the S is equal to S plus A of I will execute for n times because there are n elements to be added.
Right, sir.
Right? Then finally return S. So S जब return होगा तो return भी एक ही बार होगा because it is out of the loop. Got it or no?
Yes, sir, got it now.
Right? So guys, let's say if I remove this bracket from here and I make it like this. Now, if I take the return statement in the for loop, what will happen?
It will take
It
n.
will take n times.
It
It will
will
take
run
n,
n times.
right? It will also execute for n times. So I'll write this in yellow so that when you refer the white screen, in that case, it will go for n times. And when it goes for n times, here I will have n, correct?
Yes, sir.
Right? If I make the summation of all these things, this will become 3n plus 2.
Yes, sir.
Is the degree of the polynomial is changing here because of this?
No.
No,
sir.
sir.
No.
No. So still the complexity of time complexity of this algorithm will remain as order of n. Getting it?
So first we define the algorithm program and then the analysis, not while doing the program, right?
Never. While doing the program, we will never analyze it. We will first design the algorithm, we will analyze it, and after analyzing it, if we find that this is the best optimized way, then we can go for the implementation. So see, there is order of n, order of, there are different classes actually. I haven't touched upon the classes because if I do it right now, you will get confused. Right, so we will be trying to find out in which class does the algorithm is belonging to, and based on that we will also decide कि सबसे best class में वो बैठना चाहिए. Then we will say it is the optimized algorithm if it fits into the best class. ठीक है?
Yes, sir.
So just have some patience. जितना मैंने
Sir.
बताया उतना समझ में आ गया क्या?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm just redoing all these changes so that.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, like this the example which you took is quite small, so we were able to do analysis easily. Like
Right.
which part of the program is running how many times and how much time it is.
Right.
But for example, the program is very big, then we will do same thing like manually. We will see each variable that how much time it is taking and how many times it is running.
Yes, we need to. We need to identify the key steps in your algorithm, the functional and computational steps. See, algorithm, you won't be writing algorithm of 2 pages, 3 pages, and 4 pages. Algorithm is a short, just a procedure of the program. Program में आप while loop, variable ये वो सब लिखते जाओगे, but algorithm won't take it. Now to understand the concept, we have taken a small code segment. But now once you know that for loop takes n plus 1 time, and whatever comes in the for loop takes n times, right? So in the algorithm, you will just write like this: for n in A, do some set of steps. So I know that the implementation of this thing is equivalent to this. But have I written it in the form of the code? No. For explaining you, I have written it in the form of the code, but for writing the actual algorithm, we will write it in language like this. So from here, I know that this is going to take n plus 1 times, whatever it is. We won't be analyzing the code at the end. We will be analyzing the algorithm only. But the algorithm is made up of all these things, right? For loop, while loop, and all this. So to explain you people to understand, to go into the depth of the concept, I have taken the small code segment to make you people understand at least. Once we will solve many examples of this type, then you will be in a condition to do everything just by looking at the code. You won't be having to do all these mathematical calculations. Just by looking at the code segment, you will answer this is the complexity. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Sir,
Any? Yes.
now what if the degree of the polynomial changes?
So we will be coming to this. Wait. Next example. ये example समझ में आ गया? Shall I move to the next example?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's go on. Now let's take next example, which is sum of two matrices. So I'll just write the algorithm first, and then we will try to analyze it. So algorithm of addition of matrices. So how many matrices I need? I need two matrices, A and B, and N defines the size of the matrix. So how does a matrix looks like this, right? What is the size of this matrix?
3 by 3.
3 by
3
3.
by 3, right? So we have taken two 3 by 3 matrix. So here value of N is equal to 3. Okay. And we need to add these two matrices, the values in this matrices now. So for this, how many for loops will be required? If you have done a program on matrix multiplication or matrix addition, you should be knowing this, that for addition of the matrices, we need two for loops. So for I is equal to 0, I is less than N, I plus plus. And then we have next loop for J is equal to 0, J is less than N, J plus plus. And then finally, we will take the values of the indexes I and J and find the summation of it. Okay, now try to analyze these statements. How much time, which statement is going to execute? Come on, tell me the answers. This for loop will execute for how much how much times?
N plus 1.
N plus 1.
N plus 1.
N plus 1.
N plus.
Right? So this is going to execute for N plus 1. Anything which comes into this for loop executes for N times. This is, we know now.
Yes, sir.
So this will execute for N times. And this is also going to execute for
N times.
N times. Next, when it comes to this for loop, now this first for loop is done. When we come to the second for loop, this for loop will also execute itself for N plus 1.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So N plus 1, and whatever is there in this for loop is also going to execute for N times.
N times.
So keep on multiplying them. Do we have any other for loop here?
No, sir.
No.
Just try to find out the summation of it. So to analyze it in time, space, complexities, f of n is equal to n plus 1 plus n square plus n plus n square. Finally, we get 2n square plus 2n plus 1. So the highest degree of polynomial is of the order of n square. Getting it?
Right,
Yes.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So the time complexity comes out to be order of n square. Similarly, for space complexity, how many matrices? So A, B, then
N,
N,
I,
I,
N, I,
J,
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 C.
and C. Write it here. Okay. So how much? What's the length of the matrix?
3.
T,
N. Matrix is a two-dimensional array. ith रो में कितने एलिमेंट्स n, jth रो में कितने एलिमेंट्स n.
And okay, sir.
आ रहा है समझ में अभी? पहला फॉर लूप आपने रो के लिए बनाया, दूसरा फॉर लूप कॉलम के लिए बनाया. सो अगर एक मैट्रिक्स में आपको वैल्यूज इनपुट करने हैं तो कितने फॉर लूप लगते हैं?
दो.
2.
2.
है ना? तो इट इज n इंटू n. एक n i के लिए और एक n j के लिए. Following it? Please ask me if you are not following the things. Please, please. Adib, Nipun, Harsh, Naman,
Following, sir, following.
Getting it, sir.
Getting, sir.
Getting it,
all
sir.
going fine up to now. Zeal,
Yes, sir. Getting it.
okay. What about B? B is also going to be n cross n.
Yes, sir.
What about n? N will be n is a number of elements, so it is going to be for ones.
1,
Constant time I is constant and j is also constant. What about C?
In multiplying.
N multiply N.
N multiplied by n. So how much we get here? We ultimately get 3n square
3n
Plus
square,
plus
See,
3.
3,
Highest degree of the order of 2. So we get order of n square. Following it?
Yes, sir.
yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's take another example. Matrix multiplication. How many loops will be required?
4,
So algorithm multiply two matrices A and B of size n for I is equal to 0, I less than n, I plus plus. For j is equal to 0, j less than n, j plus plus. Then initialize the third matrix to find the sum of, to find the addition of the internal values, and then run this for the third time. And then finally find the sum of the in jth index. for this at least you should know how multiplication is done. अगर वो नहीं पता है तो फिर दिक्कत हो जाएगी. ठीक है. Now analyze this. How will it execute? Tell me how much time this first for loop will execute.
N+1.
So this will execute for n+1. For this for loop, this inner for loop will execute for n times. Right?
Yes, sir.
Then this statement, sorry, this is
N times.
what about this?
N times.
Because it is within the for loop, it will also go for n times. This for loop will also go for n times, and this is also going to go for n times. Because anything which is within this for loop will execute n times.
N times.
Come to the inner for loop. This is going to execute for n+1 times. If this is for n+1 times, this inner statement will execute for n times. This will execute for n times, and this is also going to execute for n times. Following?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. Come to the inner for loop. This one is also going to execute for n+1, and for this is going to execute for n1. Find the summation. कितना आएगा बताओ?
So 2n cube plus 3n square plus 1.
2n cube plus 3n square plus 2n plus 1. Highest degree is of the order of n cube. So time complexity is of the order of n
N
cube.
cube.
ठीक है? What about space? We have A matrix, B matrix, C matrix. Then we have N, I, J, K. A is similar to the previous example. This is n square. This is n square. This is n square, and all these things are 1. So here the highest degree is of the order of n square. कोई दिक्कत है क्या? प्लीज पूछो. Yes, guys.
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
So sir, with this example, we can say that no, ki space complexity and time complexity are not same.
Not same. Time is required is of the order of n cube, and space is of the order of n square. These are not same. ठीक है?
Yes, sir.
Ishita, are you getting this? Anirudh, Abhijit,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Abhijit Panchal, Zeel.
Yes, sir.
You are not asking any questions, so I am getting a bit confused here now. about the status? Please tell me. Should we go ahead? Should we move on?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let's take another problem. Now I'll be just writing the small code segments. So for I equals to 0, I is less than n, I plus plus, for j is equal to 0, I is less than n, I plus plus,
Sir, I or
and
J in second for loop.
sorry, j, and there is some statement. Can you find this? Take your notebook and try to find out. I'll be giving you some time to analyze it and just see how the iterations are going on. Do it in the class itself. So I have made some modifications. Please go to the code segment once again and then try to analyze it. So yeah, so I'll give you one example. Then rest of the problems maybe you will be solving it. Let's say we have I, we have j, and number of times it is going to execute. Now, when the value of I is 0, how many times j is going to execute?
0.
See, when the value of I
Zero.
is 0, it comes into the second loop and j less than I. Is it going to give true?
No.
Because j is also 0 and I is also 0. Right? J and I both are 0. It will not execute for any number of times. Understood?
Yes, sir.
What if I becomes 1 and j is still 0?
Then it will run for one time.
It will run for once. Then I is still 1, or I'll write it this way. So this is done, right? This is done. Then I is 1, j is 0 and 1. So j will run for the number of times,
2
or
times.
the value of I is given, right? So this is going to execute, this is not going to execute. So totally how many times it executed? 1. So this iteration is completed. Then I value becomes 2. And
So,
j, for when I is equal to 2, j will be checked for 0, 1 and 2.
Yes,
Because
sir.
see this because of this condition, right? J's condition is checked for I, right?
so,
Yes.
so we are checking this for the statement, right?
We are checking for this yeah, statement.
Yeah. Because if you are checking for the for loop, then the number of time it will be 2 for the 1. If I is 1, then it will be 2.
For I is 1.
Number of times it will be 2
Yeah,
for the
we
for.
are, हम लोग क्या कर रहे हैं, हम लोग फ्रीक्वेंसी काउंट करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, सो दैट जो एनालिसिस हमने अभी करके देखा था उसको हम मैथमेटिकल फॉर्म में लिखने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. तो when value of I is 0 and j is also 0, it didn't executed once also. But when the value of I became 1, this particular condition got true 1 times, j less than I. because j is 0. J is 0 in this case. This one I am talking about. J is 0 and I is 1. So this condition is true.
Yes.
Getting it? When this condition is true, this statement will get executed once. Again, going back and incrementing the value of j. Now j became 1. Then this condition became false. And we rejected, we ended up the inner for loop. We'll go to the outer for loop and the value of I will get incremented. It became how much? 2. For the value of I is equal to 2. Once again, j value will be initialized to 0.
Yes, sir. And it will execute
Then-
for 2 times.
Then 1, then 2. So here also these 2 times it will get executed, and third time it will get filled. The number of executions will be 2 for this statement. I'll write here statement also for your reference. So this iteration over, then i's value becomes 3. Again j will be initialized to 0, 1, 2 and 3. This 3 times it will execute, and 4th time it will get like this.
Stop. Yes, sir.
Stop. So on, this process will continue for the number of values we take for I.
Yes, sir.
I could say that this is going to run for n times. देखो जितना I का वैल्यू है उतनी बार ही चल रहा है.
Yes, sir.
तो अगर I का वैल्यू n है, if the value of I is n, then how many times it will execute? N
2
times.
times.
Right?
Right,
Now for this particular section, try to find the summation. So number of times statement will execute is equal to 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus up to n. So this is the sum of n numbers series, which is equal to how much? From induction you might be knowing this, discrete mathematics. Sum of sum of numbers from 1 to n, or sum of n numbers, इसका एक generalized series बनता है. What is the final result for this? If you don't know it, please try to refer to the previous course and get it done. It is n into n plus 1
By 2.
by 2.
Yes.
Further solving this, it comes out to be n square plus n.
N by 2.
What is the highest degree? Order of
2 n square.
So mathematically, if you solve it, this is how it is being solved. Understood, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Any query?
In this question, why we just checked for the statement number of times and why not for the for
No,
loops?
here why we did it is because in the previous cases, whatever we have seen, right, for the matrices and all, we can see even instead of having 2 for loops, the outer and the inner for loops were not dependent on each other.
Yes,
See, this
sir.
I was
Yes,
totally
sir.
independent and j was totally independent. But in this example, the inner for loop is dependent upon the value of the I coming from the outer for
Outer.
loop.
Yeah, yes, sir.
That's why.
Okay,
So
sir.
every time just counting the number of for loops won't give you the solution. Luckily, this time you people have done it as order of n square, and it came out to be order of n square. But every time it won't come the same. There may be different answers also, right? Like for example, we'll take this question. Let's say we have p equal to 0, a for loop which is initializing from 1, and I'm sorry, value of p is less than equal to n I plus plus, and p is equal to p plus I. Now tell me the complexity. Now don't say n plus 1 and n, because यहाँ for loop कितना चल रहा है? आपको क्या दिख रहा है? अभी यहाँ पर एक for loop है. So what you will say that, sir, this will run for n plus 1 times and this will run for n times. So order of n, which is wrong. I'm giving you the hint here itself. Now think and tell me the complexity. Try to think mathematically. Just we did right now. The same way you have to also map the value of I and p and then create a series of numbers and find out the final complexity. Just try it out. Fine. So now in this particular example, we have p equal to 0 and a for loop where a condition is checked for p less than n. And this for loop will execute until and unless this condition is giving true result. Here we don't know the value of n, what it is going to be. Okay, so we are assuming that for the initial few steps, the for loop has given true result, and when the for loop gives true result, what happens is p is equal to p plus I. So the i's value will be added to p's value. So when the value of I is 1, because the for loop is initializing it from 1 itself. So when the value of I is 1, the p value will be 0 plus 1, because we are assuming that this is true right now. Okay.
Right,
So
sir.
p is equal to p plus I. That means p is equal to 0 plus 1. That means 1. Again, go back to the for loop, increment the value of I. Now the value of I is becoming 2. So when the value of I becomes 2, again we are assuming that this is true. When this is true, then p is equal to p plus I. So p का value अभी change हो गया, कितना हो गया था? 1. So 1 plus I, that means 2. It gives me 3. Again go back to the loop, increment the value of I. It comes out, incrementing value is 3. Again this is true, p is less than 1. Then p equal to p plus I. P's first value was 1 plus 2, and then add 3 to it. So 1 plus 2 plus 3. So this is nothing but your p, which is coming from the previous step. If you haven't analyzed it, this is coming here. Then this 1 plus 2 is again coming back here. This 1 plus 2 plus 3 is again coming back here. And the value of I is getting added every time. अभी समझ में आया क्या?
Yes, sir.
Likewise, if I'm assuming that this particular function or this particular loop will execute at some point of time, this will stop executing. When it stops executing, let's say that the value of I at that moment is k. When the loop stopped, let's assume that the value of I at that moment is k. So when the value of I is k, what will be the value of p? So value of p will be 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus up to k. ये समझ में आया क्या निपुण आपको? ये वाला part.
Yes, sir. Instead of n, you are taking it to the k times, and then you are just taking it.
Yes, I am not taking it to the n times because I don't know the value of n.
Right, right.
Right. So I am assuming that at some kth value of I, the loop stopped.
Right, right, sir.
So which gives me k into k plus 1 by 2. Now to take this into the form of a function of n, I need to verify when this for loop will stop. So this for loop will stop only when this condition p less than n is giving false. When it will give me false, it will give me false only when p is greater than n,
Correct, sir.
right? So p's value we have calculated, which is k into k plus 1 by 2, k into k plus 1 by 2 greater than n. After solving this equation, what I get is k square greater than n. Taking square root on both the sides gives me k equal to root n. So this finally of in the complexity of the function of n comes out to be square root of n. आया समझ में सब लोगों को अभी?
Sir, what if we know the value of n, then it will take n
Then
plus
it
1
would
times,
have
right?
gone simply यहाँ पर हम यहीं पे आंसर निकाल लेते हैं कि n तक जाना है हमें. Then in that case it would be of the order of n square only, like previous examples. The value of n was known. Any more confusion? Muskan?
No confusion, sir.
Understood everything till now?
Yes, sir.
Anish?
Yes, understood.
Harsh? Zeel? Jigyasa?
Understood, sir.
Naman?
Understood.
Shambhavi? Nitya?
Get it, sir.
Nitya is there in the call?
Yes, sir, she had some network issues, so she ended up the call.
Okay. Fine. So let's take one more example before we break. Now you know the approach, right? So try to solve it. For I is equal to 1, I less than n, and instead of incrementing the value of I, we are multiplying it by 2. And then some statements are executed. Try it out.